Hello, I hope you are well. Good to be back online again for another live chat about our favourite topic of language learning. And yes, I have had another busy week actually. I'm getting things prepared for the Polyglot Conference in October. So we've got the global version happening, which will be in our live environment via the website at the start of October from the 1st to the 9th. And then we're going to be live in Cholula in person for the first time since the whole pandemic started. And we will be in Mexico from the 28th to the 30th of October. And during that time in Mexico, we're going to have a week before the conference where we'll offer language lessons to people in Spanish and in Nahuatl with Zoloa languages, and Anya and her team. And we will also be running lots of fun things with our partners and sponsors at Langfest, UTalk, Lingua Cultura experience, as well as italki, Asimil, Teach Yourself, and Michel Thomas. So it's really going to be a lot of fun, as well as the many people who are writing to offer to speak and to host events as well on the side. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope to see some of you there. Tickets hopefully should be available from tomorrow. I just need to, first of all, have a week where we allow the people who have pre-registered, and if you haven't pre-registered, you still can pre-register to join. If you go to polyglotconference.com and you go to the Cholula page, there's Cholula page, and then you can go to click on the pre-register button to make sure you get an email to be the first to find out when tickets are available. So if you are interested in coming to the conference, please make sure you've done that, and we will look forward to seeing you there. Anyway, this week has been a busy week, and so I haven't really had time to plan a sort of a graphic for this week's topic, but I do have a topic that I want to talk about, and I want to talk about something that we discuss on many occasions. In fact, it was something that was brought to my attention during the Polyglot gathering in Warsaw just a couple of months ago. And so if you are interested in vocabulary, learning words and how people do it and how best to do it, then stick around. You're going to want to hear some of what I've got to say about that. I'm also going to be obviously give you a chance to ask questions at the end as well. But I want to sort of just give a description as to how it works. And I'll start off with a story because I think stories are always good. We're always taught that if you're doing a presentation or giving a presentation on something, then tell a story because we all identify with stories. And this is actually really important because it's important for vocabulary learning too. Language learning in general, in fact, storytelling for most learning is actually really, really good because we tend to remember stories well as kind of a start, a middle, and an end that we can follow, and we can follow the path. And it might not always be exactly the same words or exactly the same story that we tell, but we know where we're going. We're on a journey. And this is true for so many things in life, I find. So this is how it goes. I was on stage at the Polyglot gathering in Warsaw, well, just outside Warsaw. And I was talking about holistic language learning, which is something I work with people who join my groups and work with me on Patreon. We talk about holistic language learning, which means we don't just look at the language learning itself, because often what I found is the language learning actually is one of the smaller parts of the whole piece of the jigsaw puzzle, really. It's actually making it work in many aspects of our lives. So I talked a lot about different things like that and gave examples from my own life, and I hope that you get to see that presentation. It's already available online, I believe. So if you are interested, then please feel free to reach out and let me know if you have any questions. Anyway, I was talking to a fairly full room in Poland, and telling stories, and I saw quite a lot of people nodding their heads in recognition of, what I was talking about, which is always very nice as a presenter, because you want to see nodding heads, people thinking okay, because otherwise you feel like you're maybe going to be bombing. You're not going to be resonating with anyone, and like, okay, what's this guy talking about? This means absolutely nothing to me at all, and I don't understand what he means by any of this. But fortunately, people were engaged and people were nodding their heads and looking at me as if to say, yeah, I know what you mean. Anyway, at the end of it, I offered, as I always do, to stay around for as many questions as I possibly can take, because I just enjoy the interactions. Although, I wouldn't be here every week, right, if I didn't enjoy the interactions with you. And somebody came up to me, and I'll try and keep them as anonymous as possible, because just because I think it's the right thing to do. And that person came up to me and they said to me, I'm doing spaced repetition on word lists every day, and I hate it. And I kind of looked, and a lot of people asked me what I think of spaced repetition software, and I don't personally use it very much. I have had stints in my life where I've used it, but I don't personally use it very much. That's not to say it's necessarily a bad thing. I think, like many things in life, it depends how you use it, the amount you use it, and your feelings towards it. This person said they hated using it, but they felt that they got into a cycle where they'd put so many words in it that they were being cycled through all of these words over and over again. And that if they didn't do it, they would forget the words. And they didn't want to do that because it was really important to keep, they'd invested so much time so far into doing it. And so I had a couple of questions to start with. First of all, how many hours was this person using it? And they said 3, maybe more. So maybe a little bit more sometimes, to go through all of the words to make them feel like they'd been through this vocabulary in this spaced repetition software. And I was like, okay, and where's the vocabulary from, and is it in context? And it seemed like it wasn't always in context. It was actually sometimes just bits of vocabulary that they found and come across and put it in there. As a second thing. The third thing I asked was, how does it make you feel doing this? And the response was, absolutely terrible. I'm exhausted. I dread doing it every day, and I do it every day. And so I really got the answers to 3 questions that I thought were important. And then we talked a little bit, and I asked how they would feel about adding more hours to each day. And the look on their face of dread was really quite obvious that was not an appealing option, to spend more hours using this spaced repetition software to learn more vocabulary. And so I said, well, how do you change that then? And also, is the vocabulary you're using, is it any use? Do you actually need what you're learning? Because sometimes we come across words, even in courses and things, that actually we don't need very often for most of what we do. And the response I got back actually surprised me. It was, I don't know if I need the vocabulary. And I think this is a really key thing. We have to know what we need, what we want to know. We have to be able to determine that. Because if we aren't learning things that are really important to our story, our lives, the interactions we have with other people, then when are we going to use that vocabulary? I mean, it's all well and good. I could learn lots of vocabulary based on things I'm naturally interested in. But if I'm talking to people who are not interested in that and they don't talk to me about that, or if they don't know the vocabulary, and I often give an example of this from my own life. I went through this phase, right? I've been through these phases of wanting to learn vocabulary that's important to me. So I learned all of the birds in Macedonian. And so to this day, I've memorized so many birds in Macedonian that, I mean, it's just crazy. I know the word for a wagtail, which is like, it's a bird you find there, I know the word for a wren. I've never seen a wren in the Balkans, but I know the word for wren. All of these words that I'd learned in Macedonian, when I ever speak to a Macedonian speaker, they never know these words. And so I'm learning them for no one. I mean, often what happens is there'll be, if the discussion comes up about any type of bird, because I like birds, I'm telling them words that they don't know, which is a very odd situation to be in. I mean, sometimes it can lead to interesting conversations, but most of the time they look a bit bewildered and why is this strange foreigner talking to me about these words that I have no idea about and I'll probably never use again? And the reason why they don't use them is because they don't use them either, and their friends don't use them, their families don't use them. And so the sort of circle goes on. But what we tend to do when we build up word lists, particularly word lists that are disjointed and not in any context, is we tend to focus on things that we think are important without knowing if they actually are important. Please do let me know by giving me a like or writing something like "yay" in the comments if you recognize this in yourself as well, so I can sort of see, particularly on Instagram, the heart thing's a really, really good thing. I'm not plugging for more likes. I mean, it doesn't really make a huge difference on the algorithm, to be honest. Over the year and a half that I've been doing this, for 2 years, my number of subscribers has not gone up because of the lives, but it does give me a good indication on the life itself if you recognize this. It's really quite an interesting thing that we collect words, or we collect books, and we collect these things, but do we use them? And we often hear people talking about learning language in context. I think that's one thing that most people that I know in the language learning space agree on, and commonly do. So, Luca talks about this. Steve Kaufman talks about this. Lydia, Judith, all of the people that I know. I think Lindy talks about it as well. We talk about learning language in context, right? And pretty much everyone I know that's in this space on the internet. Ollie talks about his books and stories, right? So he's obviously talking about context too. So a lot of people talk about this whole context thing. And why is it important? Well, why it's important is because that's how we learn our own language. We learn our own language in context. So we learn words that go together. And some words go together because they're in idioms. Some words go together because you typically see them together. Knife and fork. So, and in English, for example, it's important that you learn it's knife and fork. We don't say fork and knife. It sounds strange. So if you're learning a language, it's good to know which way around it goes. I'll give you an example of something where this changes. So when televisions would be, or a film would be in English, you say black and white. Now, that's not the way you say it in French. You say white and black in French. But in English, you say black and white. And it is important that you get that right if you want to keep the speaker of the language's mind with you. Because when you say something that's a little bit strange or a little bit different, even though it's understandable, what it does to the person listening is it confuses them just for that split second while they translate it into what they're used to hearing. And they go, oh yeah, they meant that. So if I say to you, I watched a white and black film, in English, it stands out immediately that you said a white and black film and not a black and white film, because we're not used to hearing it. So learning these phrases in context, this vocabulary in context, actually can be extremely important. Another example might be salt and pepper. We don't say pepper and salt, we say salt and pepper, even though the S is first and the P is second. We're not saying it in alphabetical order, we just say salt and pepper. And if you say it the wrong way around, it just makes people go, what's going on? Just for a split second, and it means that they possibly don't follow you. So when you're learning vocabulary, particularly if you're using books or stories or phrases that you can learn to say things about yourself. It's very, very good to do it in this kind of way. And the chances are as well that you're going to remember it more easily. And the chances are also that you're going to be able to piece the things together like chunks of language that you can put together until you have sentences and then whole paragraphs or whole conversations that you can have with people. And this is why I think that, generally speaking, when you learn languages, it's not the wisest idea to learn just random words. Even if they're the most frequent words, you don't know how frequent they are necessarily in common speech and what they go together with. So this is why I think this is important. Also, frequency words could be a thing to a degree, but the words that are really important to you may be so low down on that frequency list. For example, if you are an architect, or if you are a sculptor, or if you are an interior designer, or if you are, I don't know, an anesthesiologist, the chances are that the word for your profession and the words that are important to you are going to be somewhere down here on the list. They're going to be so far down that you're not going to see them for a long time. So you need to make sure that you're learning words that are important to you. It could also be that, there are common words that you don't necessarily need straight away, So depending on your needs and on your life and on your environment, you may not need certain words straight away that other people might find very important, and they could come up later. So what happens when you clog your system with lots and lots of vocabulary and potentially a lot of vocabulary you don't need? Until you use it, you don't know if you need it. And vocabulary tend to reinforce by repetition, by repeatedly hearing things, repeatedly seeing things. And if you're not doing that, the vocabulary does tend to slip away. So we need to get out there and do it. So when I spoke to this lovely person who came and asked me this question about the repetition vocabulary system that they were using, my suggestion was stop using it. And if you feel that that's too much to go completely cold turkey, at least only do 30 minutes so that you feel that you can come down from it, but get off it. Because if you're not speaking and using, and this person said to me they were not actually using the language, I said it's way better for you to be using the language at this point, to be speaking it at least half the time that you're using these 3 hours a day, using it, seeing what actually you need, and getting that repetition in a natural way. Because learning a language is often to do with either communication with a person, or if you're more interested in reading and you don't really want to speak, then reading books. But we don't learn languages to complete lists of words usually. That would be an extremely academic approach to, for example, if you were studying lists of words to compare them to other languages, for example, I could see how there may be some practical application there. But generally speaking, we don't do this. And so we have to ask ourselves a very honest question: why am I learning the language? What do I want to do with it? Am I doing it to just learn lists of words, or am I doing it because I want to actually communicate or use the language for something else? So that was my advice: to stop with the spaced repetition software, to start using the language in a natural way, to see what comes up and not worry about what doesn't come up. Because what doesn't come up means that you're not actually needing it, using it anyway. So you can worry about that later, once you feel very comfortable in what you know. And after a while, the vocabulary that you feel comfortable and need repeats itself in a very natural way. And that's kind of how my story with language learning has been. And so, yes, there we go. I'm just going to draw the curtain here because I cannot see the screen very well with the sun in my eyes. Hopefully, this will help me to be able to read your comments. So do excuse me while I do that. There we go. Right, let me see. I can see that I've got some comments in now. I did start with YouTube last time, so I'm going to go to Instagram first this time and see. Okay. I hope you could feel the sort of a connection to what I was saying and that it made sense to you. Okay, so let me see. Dearie me, let me see. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, nice to see you all. Thank you for all your hellos. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Good evening. How's it going? It's going well, thank you. I've just come back from a very short trip to Carnarvon, which is a place in North Wales. Very, very pretty town that I like very much. And I also went to Bangor. I had lunch in Bangor with Simon Ager from Omniglot, and that was extremely pleasant as well. He's such a lovely person. Let me see. Let me see. I'm all the waves. Hello, hello, hello. Okay. How do you overcome the intermediate plateau? I'm going to park that question and focus on vocab questions first, but that might be a question for another time. Intermediate plateau, I actually don't believe exists. In a very short thing, I don't believe it exists. I think it's a fallacy. Sorry, unpopular point of view, but it's true. I don't believe it exists. I know what people mean by it, but I don't think it exists. In the US, I'm pretty sure you could say fork and knife. Really? You could say fork and knife in the US? I want a fork and knife. It sounds too close to a rude word. So I want like you're saying I want a knife. So people would be like, okay, because you're saying fork and knife, right? So it's very close to another word. So that's why people don't say it in English, I think, in the UK anyway. It tends to be knife and fork. We also say cutlery, which in the US I don't believe you use. But cutlery would include the spoon as well. Let me see. Does anyone know what's acquisition? I've never learned vocabulary by heart. I've heard it's okay. Real, yeah, real situations. Okay, so okay, yeah, learning vocabulary by heart. Look, for a test, it might work. There are certain techniques that you can use for learning vocabulary to help it help it make it more memorable. There was there are several things like memorize is actually built on that function of using the mems, they call them in memorize, to make up a story that goes with the sounds or the words themselves to make them more memorable. And so yeah, it's a thing that you can do to help. If you are interested in sort of looking more into memory techniques, then there was a book that was recommended by Yenja on YouTube, and she spoke at the Polyglot conference once, and she's a memory champion from Sweden with Mongolian heritage or Mongolian origin, should I say. Super nice person, really bright, has got some great videos and ideas. So if you're not following her, if you haven't seen her, do look her up on YouTube. Yenja Wintersoul. So it would be Yanjaa, Yenja, and you should find her. Anyway, she recommended a book in one of her videos, which I actually took as a good recommendation and read, and it was Moonwalking with Einstein, I believe it was called. And the book describes how an American journalist wants to get into the memory championship world and finds out all about it, and actually speaks a lot to Ed Cook, who is one of the CEOs of Memrise. And it's a super interesting book, really interesting read. not just for the memory techniques and things that people do, but just generally to understand that world a bit better. So yeah, I absolutely, if you are interested, it gives you some good indications as to what's good to do. So yeah. Although obviously that's to memory techniques, so it needs to be sort of bent around to languages. And of course, memory palaces, while they can be handy for learning vocabulary, and definitely there was a Scrabble champion from New Zealand who came over to Europe, and he won the Scrabble championship in French. But even though he'd won it, he didn't speak French because he'd basically memorized the Scrabble dictionary in French. But that didn't mean he could speak French or even understand it very well. He just memorized the dictionary using these memory techniques. But as language learners and people who want to necessarily then actually use the language and not just do take part in a memory style competition, what we can do is take the elements that work for us. So using the practice ideas of how to create memorable images for words that we're finding difficult to remember, getting those hooks, the memory hooks there, and getting them to work for us. So that's how I use it. It tends to be also that the stories disappear after a while if I use the word a lot, because I just remember the word then. Thank you, Richard, for the content you upload. Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you. It's very kind of you. Thank you. Let me see. I use system repetition progress and sentences. Yeah, so you use sentences in these word lists. Yeah, that I think that probably is a good way of doing it, so that you have sentences. And it's always best to have sentences that you've used or you need for your own speech and repetition or writing or reading or whatever it is you're doing. Having random ones, I think, is the worst thing. Randomized ones, or ones just based on sort of a high frequency list that's not really relevant to you, is probably less useful. I'm not going to say it's completely useless, but it's less useful than words and sentences that are actually meaningful to you. So I mean, I learned these words for birds really easily because I was interested and motivated to learn them. But they were absolutely useless in terms of how I could use them because no one gets them. Top of the morning to you too. Do you recommend what? Sorry, cartoons like Peppa Pig and others for vocab. Peppa Pig's a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, I used to watch Peppa Pig in German with my daughter when she was little. She enjoyed it in German. But yeah, Peppa Pig can be quite handy if you like Peppa Pig. I quite like Peppa Pig. And Peppa Pig is in many languages, so you can watch Peppa Pig in all sorts of different languages, including like I think even Scottish Gaelic. They have Peppa Pig, and so you can watch it in lots of languages. And yeah, why not? I mean, if you like it, why not do that? You know, absolutely. Let me a second. Oops. There we go. Sorry, I just had a bit of a technical hitch there on my phone. And let me just, okay, I think I'm back. Okay, so yeah, Peppa Pig is really, really good. If you like it, of course, I'm not going to recommend it to everyone. This is where it's a really good example, actually, to say that different things work well for different people. So not everybody has the same interests, likes, dislikes, motivations, or things that engage them they can learn from. So make sure you're thinking of things that actually are going to work for you, and being honest with yourself. I don't like this, or it doesn't gel with me, it doesn't work for me. It's absolutely fine, because there are lots of different methods out there, but there are also lots of different personalities and different people, right? So we're all individuals and we're all different, and just because something works well for one person doesn't necessarily mean that it will work well for another person, or for me, or for you. But also, it doesn't mean that that is inherently a bad method. It's just that it doesn't work for me or for you. So, I mean, being very, very frank with you, there are things that Luca does that don't work for me, bore me to death. But Luca is clearly an extremely talented and successful language learner, and he has a lot of very good things to say. And very often, even though I don't follow everything Luca does, I do recommend Luca to other people and his videos and the kinds of strategies he uses, because some people who come to me, I feel very confident that they're going to work for them. But I'm not necessarily going to take them through the Luca method that I don't use. Um, do you know what I mean? It's so there isn't a kind of a completely wrong and right for this. If even if doing my Duolingo experience of Swahili and being quite open and candid about it, I'm never going to say that Duolingo is bad, because I meet people who show me that they've had a lot of success using it. And so I can't deny what I've heard. You know, Even though I do meet people who struggle and have a nightmare with it, like I have had that experience, not 100%, but I have had experience that drove me crazy. But different people are motivated by different things, and those personality types are things we have to take into account. Okay. After Richard said that intermediate plateau doesn't exist, it starts addressing it differently from now. Okay. Yeah, I know it kind of means that it kind of does. I did talk about this once, I think, before in a live, but a long time ago. So I forgive you if you didn't you didn't watch every single live that I've done for the last 2 years, because I mean, yeah, um, I get it. I get it. I mean, I'm very handsome, but and extremely charming. But I get why somebody might not want to look at me every single week. Um, Seriously though, it's I don't think it exists because um, I think that what happens is we start treading water, is what happens, and we don't push ourselves in certain directions, and so we're waiting for that turn in the bend, right? But that's what we perceive as the intermediate plateau, I think. But I don't think it is a real plateau. I think it's just a sort of an increment of language learning, if we are language learning at that point. Because many people I hear about on this intermediate plateau are not really learning a language, they're just using what they know. If we are actually learning, there is an incremental sort of difference, but possibly not as easy to perceive and to understand. As, for example, when we first start making sentences, which comes quite quickly. Yeah. Okay. Oops, a daisy. Oh, it's really good to see you too. Nice to see you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Must be one of the ones that likes to see me. It's nice. Always nice to get nice comments. Yeah. Harriet, can you tell how to remember German words? Okay. How similar they are they to English words? I want to make them easier to by connecting them to something else, but I can't. Wow. That's probably a very specific question that is slightly difficult to get into a lot of depth, but I'll do my best. Yes, so there are a lot of words in German that are similar to English. I mean, the base words in German are basically, or the base words in English are basically like German. So words for basic foodstuffs, like milk, for example, water, basic animal words like cow, kuh. Let's think what else. Words to do with colors are very German: green, grün, rot, red, blau, blue, and then you also get a lot of verbs that are basic verbs like swim, and then you get the grammar that goes with it, right? Because English and German are Germanic languages. One of the features of Germanic languages is this changing of the sort of the vowel sound, and that's because they're called strong verbs. So, swim, swam, swum, for example, in English would be you can basically map it onto all of the Germanic languages in the same way. So even run, rennen, that you can see the similarities between the two languages, right? So a lot of those things are the same. Then there are words that are just German, but you have to kind of then break things down. So let me think of a word that is going to make sense to you, and then we can break it up. Okay, so okay, Lungenentzündung. It's a very nice word. Not really. It's not a nice word. It means pneumonia. Now in German, Lung is also lung, right? Your lung in your body. It's the same word as in English. Entzündung. Entzündung is the word for an inflammation in German. Okay. And so this because it maps onto Slavic words where you've got zapalenie or something similar, where it's to do with on fire almost. This kind of palenie is to do with like fire and setting fire to something, or on fire, or even smoking in some languages, right? In with Slavic groups. In German, this is to do also. It has that feeling of heat with it, and so it means in German it's an inflammation, which also inflammation in English is to do with flames, flammable, or it's connected to all the same etymology. So that's all that is. So whereas in English we get the word pneumonia, which is a Greek word, pneumos, which is related to the word for lungs in Greek, which we don't ever get taught. But so in English, actually, we have to learn the word pneumonia, then we have to learn separately what it means. In German, they're very lucky because they learn the word for pneumonia and know exactly what it means. So you get that in German for lots of things. Like in English, we don't have it. Like Hornhautentzündung is in English keratitis. Hornhaut is the word for cornea of the eye. Okay, so the cornea of the eye is your Hornhaut, and then Entzündung is again this inflammation of the cornea. And in English we use keratitis, which if you say it, most people probably have never heard of it unless you're medically trained. Bindehautentzündung as well is the same, which is, and I always, as soon as I say this word in German, I forget the English word because the German word is so descriptive. I'll have to think if I can it's always, if I say it in one language, I can never say it in the other one. Usually it's German comes into my head first for this word. And then in English, I'm like, oh my word. No, I can't remember off the top of my head. What's it called? I don't know. It doesn't matter. But it's another eye issue, okay, that you get, that you oh no, it's gone. It's completely gone out of my head. So it's like another eye condition. It's actually more common than keratitis that you get. And if any of you know it, please feel free to write it in the comments, and it might be right. But what I do is I break these words down so that I understand the meanings. And retelling stories like this to other people also helps. So if you're learning German, absolutely break things down so that you can make sense of them. See what things are typical for going at the start of things, at the end of things, and then seeing what's in the middle and trying to work out what that etymology is. Etymological stories I find fascinating and also extremely interesting to sort of get into the logic of the language. Yeah, I'm not going to remember that word, am I? What's it called? Oh my word. And it's the same word in French. And as soon as I say it, as soon as I hear it or I read it, I'll know it. And it's the same word in French. As soon as I say it in German, it just kills any other language for that translation. It's really annoying. Okay. Okay, no, I'm not going to remember it. Hey, Richard. Okay, I've just started extensive reading. Any tips? It depends what you're doing it for. I mean, do you understand what you're reading? Extensive reading. Do you understand it all? I mean, how much do you understand? I always find it interesting to know what people understand by extensive reading. Is it comprehensible extensive reading or incomprehensible extensive reading? Because the comprehensible input is the one that's going to really help. If it's incomprehensible input, it may wash over you to a degree, but it also may end up boring you to death. And yeah. So watch out for that. FYI, I've watched all of your live streams with different accounts. Oh my word! Wow, thank you very much. I feel quite honoured. Thank you. Use flashcards. Yeah, flashcards. I've used flashcards in the past as well, and for different reasons. But yeah, pink eye. Yeah, pink eye. But it's got another word in English that it's a lot more. It's kind of. It's a long. It's a long word. I think it begins with a C, and I'm gonna get it. My word. But yeah, in America, you call it pink eye. In American English, it's always called pink eye, but it's not called that in the UK. We know pink eye, we understand it, but we don't call it that typically. And it just hurts. Oh, that's annoying. Anyway, how often would you recommend looking up words? They were reading a book in the beginning. Professor Arguelles talks a lot about this kind of stuff for the reading. My honest tip is if you need to look up so many words that it's not enjoyable to read, then possibly the book's wrong for you. So you need to look at something else. If you can read the book and it makes sense, but you're missing little bits because you don't know every single word, that's not necessarily a problem. If a word comes up often, like say 5 times, and you don't know it, then look that word up. But I wouldn't be looking up every single word because that would just it'd take all of the enjoyment out of a lot of the enjoyment out of reading, unless you're doing intensive reading of a passage that you're trying to translate and make sense of for grammatical and lexical reasons. So you want to get to grips with how the language works. Then it's fine to have a paragraph that you maybe don't understand a lot of in the beginning, but you want to get into. That's my exception. But if you're reading, as in reading a book, like you as I understand from what you've written, then I would say conjunctivitis. That's what it is. It is conjunctivitis. Exactly, conjunctivitis. Yes. Oh, Lynn, you're amazing. Okay, conjunctivitis. Oh, there we go. I've got 2 people mentioning conjunctivitis now. Fantastic. Oh, fantastic. Oh, 3 people. Look at that. Conjunctivitis. How annoying. Yeah. And you see, Tomek's written it in Polish on yeah, on YouTube, on Facebook, on YouTube. Zapowenia, what is it? Sporjek. Sporjek. Is that right, Tomek? Did I pronounce that okay? Was that understandable? Make it a bit bigger for me. Spojowek. Spojowek. Zapalenia, Spojowek. Yeah, so that's that palenia that you see in from Slavic languages. It's always got this kind of fire, this kind of burning type etymology attached to it. And so it's used for, like in German with Entzündung, it's used in a similar way. Thank you for confirming that with me, Tomek. I got to the end of amazingly, of the questions that I saw on Instagram. So I'm going to go over to YouTube and see if I can make sure I've got the questions here. I may actually get to the end of the questions today. That's amazing. Hi from Greece. Hello. Nice to see you. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, the Bing Fruit as well. Nice to see you. Okay. Bruna, you're currently in Riga learning Russian. Riga's quite good for speaking Russian. Whenever I was there, actually, I went there to learn Latvian, and the big kind of thing I was trying to not do was to speak Russian while I was there because I wanted to use my Latvian, which wasn't as good, and so I was doing my very best to use Latvian. But yeah, there's quite a lot of Russian spoken there, so you can use it quite a lot. Bună ziua din România, bună ziua, Tiffany, ce mai faceți? Bine. And start goedenavond, goedenavond Joanna, nice to see you. Trinona ma, yeah. Gareth Mahaga, Trinona ma. Hello Richard, hello. Hello. I've been watching YouTube's like Tom Klutz and Sabbatical. Tommy from New York learns lots of languages in Africa. Find it really interesting, the different dialects. Wow, I've not heard of that creator, Craig. Thanks for the list. I don't know him. Let's see, Tiffany. I like learning random new words, even if I don't keep them all in my active vocabulary. Yeah, it can be fun. I mean, look, if you're learning random new words because you find it fun, go for it. I mean, look, there's nothing that. This is the thing, right? Everything anyone says about language learning, I think, needs to be taken with a little pinch of salt, because there are certain things that hold true. You're not going to pick it up necessarily just by osmosis. Some people do, though. Some people do. You put them in a country and they start listening to the language and they just start saying things. It's rare. Normally, we need to do something actively. But yeah, it's also possible. But yeah, learning fun words that you just find interesting. Nothing wrong with it necessarily. Just yeah, as long as you know you're doing it for that reason. I think Tiffany, you're a great example for someone doing that. So fantastic. Ich habe meinen Lieblingsvogel auf Deutsch gelernt. Die Bach, die Bachstelzer. Stelzer, Entschuldigung, die Bachstelzer. Die kenne ich eigentlich nicht, die Bachstelzer. Muss eben schauen, was ist so eine Bachstelze? Das weiß ich ja gar nicht. Naja, nur gucken. Ja, schau mal nach, aber nachher. Das kann ich später machen. Okay. How nice to see you. Hello, hello, hello. I believe this is the problem that many ancient language learners face. They learn the words that they never tend to use. For this reason, they usually forget the words they learned. Exactly, and this is really, really good that you say this, because this is the big issue with it, right? Is that you know how much you've tried to learn, you remember what you've forgotten, as in you remember how much you've forgotten, but what you don't take into account is how useful the stuff you've forgotten actually was. And usually it's not that useful. So I have been working with somebody on a language that they're learning at the moment, and we've been working for several months, right? And the language course that we're using has possibly some of the most useless vocabulary, and in such a strange order, that I think I've ever seen in a course. And I am amazed that this person has stuck with it and been through it. And we're going through it together for their second time. My first time, I don't speak the language. But I really enjoy looking at it and analyzing it and talking about the language with them. So, but at the same time, such weird vocabulary, like super weird, talking about like sort of monuments and heaven knows what before you even get to chapter 5. It's so random, so random. You can't even ask how much a ticket to the airport is, or things that you might need if you go there, or things that you might want to say about yourself. Even you can't. So bizarre. Anyway, this is just how it goes, isn't it? Words relating to my profession, hairdresser, are very far down in the frequency list. Yeah, Tiffany, I can imagine. Yeah, I don't use the hairdresser vocabulary that often. I don't. Is that surprising anyone? I'm sorry, I'm just in a silly mood today, but anyway, I'm in a silly mood most days. The thing that I found really funny when I first started talking on YouTube, people would meet me and they say, "I thought you were going to be really serious." Not at all. I'm so not serious. I'm so not serious about almost anything. Life's too short to be too serious all the time, isn't it? Or is that just me? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I am a little bit too. Yeah, I am. I'm kind of. I don't take myself very seriously, to be honest. Okay, we have active and passive vocabulary. Absolutely, we do. I learn words so I can recognize words, but do not necessarily use those words. Exactly. Yep, that's also fine. Yep. Is it better to learn two languages such as English and German at the same time? If you want to, you can learn them. They can help each other out, actually. Languages that are related, like German, French, English. I use those three, and I know they're from different language families. For anyone says to me, "Well, why are you mentioning French? It's not a Germanic language." It isn't, but I mean, over 60% of our vocabulary in English is from French. So it's kind of English is this weird, sort of child of French and German that I don't know. It's just well, Germanic languages and Norman French, I should say. It's this weird language that was born out of out of necessity, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, we have a lot of the Germanic base is still there, but there's a lot of French superimposed on the English. So possibly it might help if you learn some German with your try. You can always try it, Johnny. You can always try it, and if you find you're not making the progress you want with your English still, you can always stop German and go back to it later. There's nothing stopping you. But yeah, why not? Just bear in mind that when you start adding more languages, you start dividing your time and your thinking capacity. So your ability to consider language. Have you ever studied any Siberian languages? That's one of the language areas I'm very interested. I haven't. Which Siberian languages? But I don't. I don't think I have. I hope you meet loads of Macedonian birders so that you'll be able to have a cracking conversation and get away from us language nerds. Now, I'm not that much of. I'm not like I wouldn't describe myself as an ornithologist, but but in my English, we grew up using the actual words of birds. We never, my family would never say there's a bird in the garden. We knew all the names of the birds, and so for me, it was crazy that people that I met would not know these. If it was really odd for me, so of course I wanted to know the different types of birds because it was important to me. The same as somebody. For me, it was always as important, almost as knowing the different types of farm animals or domestic animals or whatever else, like breeds of dogs, for example. I just knew the different birds from a young age, and they were part of my vocabulary from a very young age. So yeah. Oh, Johnny, thank you so much. That's so kind. You're the best. Oh, I don't know if I'm the best, but you're very kind. Thank you for following me as well. I appreciate it. Okay, the fork vowel is further away from the other word in American English, I think. Possibly, David. You don't fork around a lot in the US. Maybe, I don't know. In the UK, people, if they want to get around using the word, they say, yeah, they'll use fork sometimes, kind of as a joke, but they'll use it. Fork and knife sound fine to me. David, I will bow to your superior knowledge of my English-speaking cousins across the pond. Yeah, in the UK, maybe I'll just speak for the UK. It doesn't. It sounds odd. It sounds like you're trying to say something else. Anyway. Not really related to the topic at the moment, but have you heard any tips? Some basic Bulgarian before my trip in October. Ooh, good question. For your trip in October, so you have like what? 3 months, August, September. Oh no, 2 months. What do you want to do with Bulgarian? That's the first question. You could actually, the teach yourself book for Bulgarian in the beginning is pretty good. So you can do quite well with that. Teach yourself Bulgarian. The other thing that you might want to check out is like something like to get some basic vocabulary in. Depends how far you want to go, right? So teach yourself Bulgarian would be my first choice. And then after that, there are some really serious books for learning Bulgarian, but I don't think that's the right thing to go down at the moment. If it's just like pleasantries that you want, then Pimsleur for some pleasantries in Bulgarian might give you a bit of a head start. And the other option could be what's it called? Like Bulgarian Pod 101 might be another option. They have some nice starter things to follow in Bulgarian. But otherwise, there are lots of very good books for like the one that was always really good for learning, getting more into Bulgarian was Intensive Bulgarian. There are 2 volumes, and now there is another book called Здравейте, which means Здравейте means hello in Bulgarian. It's a greeting to more than one person, and that is from a university in Bulgaria that has like courses, and they have it split up into A1, A2, B1, B2, and I believe C1 now as well. That's quite a good book as well. Those books are pretty good actually. Those 3, I've got all of those books. Yeah, but teach yourself for just like getting some basics down and going a little bit further if you want. And it's also going to be quicker to go through that than it is to go through Pimsleur and stuff, and Pod 101 have a lot of English in them. So you're going through a lot of English before you get to the little bits of Bulgarian. But yeah, they're the ones that I would mention. What's your opinion on using memory palaces? I spoke about that at the beginning a little bit, Ronald. Let me see. They can be good, but so memory palaces for learning vocabulary, they can be helpful if you want to learn lists of words. Let's say, for example, if you're in a conversation, you can stop and think about a word and kind of go into the recesses of your mind to find it, then it can be particularly useful. For immediate reproduction of language, less so, I would say. But I mean, that's my experience, and somebody else might have a very different experience of this. That's my experience. So I often find that the stories that I come up with to remember the hooks, to remember the vocabulary, those stories and those things fall away the more I repeat the word, and then the word just stays. And the word itself becomes an additional hook for another word from another language or from the same language. Like I was talking about this palenie, zapalenie, these types of things from Palic. All of these words combine to kind of help you make an etymological group in a language, like I was just saying now in Polish for these kinds of words. Remember It by Nelson Dellis. I don't know that one. How can one be intentional about using new vocabulary in language lessons? You can do it in a few ways, actually. You can write things that you want to say, read them out, use them as a template to talk about them. You can write down 5 words that you want to learn desperately and make it a challenge to yourself to get them out during the lesson. And you can also ask for feedback on certain things and ask your teacher questions as well. And then when they ask you questions back, try and get the words in, those kinds of things. You can also use it in your writing online. So, on a place like Journaly writing about the topic, or using the vocabulary you want to use, and that would be a good way of doing it. Yep, so there's a few ways. Also, reading, if you want to read or listen to things, finding things that contain that type of vocabulary, like topics in that language by people who are interested in it too. All those kinds of things will help. Growth in the language is similar to human growth. Progress is significantly noticeable from infancy to adolescence, but less noticeable in adulthood. Yeah, fair enough. That's fair enough comment. Ronald, when we first learn languages, we are in the dark room of ignorance for 9 months and studying. Then all of a sudden, we see the light and understanding, and we begin to comprehend. Yep, nice analogy. I like that. Hello, German is low key, but most Chinese language in Europe. Okay, the most Chinese language in. I'm not sure I understand that. Is low key the most Chinese language in Europe? I don't get your comment, Israel. I'm trying to reread it. You're like comparing. Oh, like the comparisons between the vocabulary and how it's made up. Is that what you mean? Yes, and if yes, then I get what you mean. Yes, I agree. Etymology is my favorite. I love etymology. Conjunctivitis, yes. Let me say, hi Richard, how are you? Very well, thank you. I'm impressed by my talent. Thank you very much. I don't know. It's funny when people talk about talent. A lot of people do shy away from this word. I and describing what talent is a weird thing. Maybe I should talk about that actually one time. I will. I'll talk about that. It's a good word for a topic, I think. Would you ever consider dabbling in grammar when learning another very similar to your own Slavic language, or just jumping right into listening and reading? I'm post interested in Czech and Slovak. Looking at how the grammar is different is actually quite useful for you. So the people I know from Poland who went to Czech Republic to learn Czech found it really easy, really good to see how the grammar was different. So particularly the noun declensions, how they differed, and they found it was a really nice shortcut to understanding and following the language more easily. So I think both things. You can do both. You can listen, read, and do the grammar thing. So it's not like there's a real choice there. I think that all of them, and see how you get on. But yeah, Czechoslovak. I haven't decided yet. Can you speak Polish? Nie wiem. Mówi po polsku. Ja myślę, że no, dla komunikacji bez problemu, ale ty mówi dobrze po polsku? Ja nie wiem. No pewnie teraz. No byłem kilka razy w Polsce, żeby mówiłem jeszcze lepiej po polsku, ale to było tak. Tak sobie mówi po polsku. Why do I only speak 7 languages? What? That's amazing. 7 languages? Are you joking? I don't know. Okay. I don't know why polyglots can learn so many words. There's so many ways to describe something. Yeah, maybe we don't. Who knows? Who knows how many words people. This is the thing. Like we don't know how much is in people's heads, right? We just don't. Also, how memories are connected as well. So some of these languages are related. So you kind of get a word for free, like German hand, finger, Fingernagel, fingernail, lips, Nase, nose. These are all very similar words. So we do get a lot of free vocabulary, I think, for a lot of these things. From Poland. Okay, Urdu Hindi is applied to language. Oh, Urdu Hindi. I'd love to learn Urdu and or Hindi. Absolutely. Hey, mate, I hope you're doing well. You're the man of languages. Thank you. Is the guy even human? I don't know. You tell me. Am I human? Possibly. Who knows? Who knows? I'm joking. Yeah, I think so. Εγώ μαθαίνω μόνο τις λέξεις που μου αρέσουν σε μία γλώσσα. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Ναι, τα αγγλικά είναι κρεολική γλώσσα, χέχε. Ναι, είναι από τα ελληνικά, δεν το ξέρεις. Έτσι είναι. Συμφωνώ. I mean, small languages like, okay, wow, okay. What's the best book for an 8-week Russian challenge? Oh, that's a very difficult question to answer because there are so many materials for Russian. I'm not sure what the best book would be for a challenge. Again, I actually really liked the Teach Yourself book for Russian. I also liked the colloquial book for Russian, colloquial Russian book. Yeah, that one I used as well. Quite practical. They mark where the stress is on the word, which is really important in the beginning for Russian to be able to reproduce the language. So yeah. I just came back from Bulgaria. I got the Ponce beginners course and the Bulgarian language and practice. They both look pretty good. So cool, Inga. Welcome back. Did you have a nice time in Bulgaria? Azgoveria Bulgarski is a good textbook, but can only be bought in Bulgaria if I'm not mistaken. Possibly Azgoveria Bulgarski. Azgoveria Bulgarski is the little yellow one, isn't it? It's like a kind of a travel guide book. And yeah, it's okay. And I think I've seen it. I think in Grant and Cutler, or what's now called Foyles in London, and may have seen it there. But yeah, normally it's in Bulgaria. The other books that I mentioned, I have seen as well in, I think, just in London. But I may be mistaken because they order a lot of books in from overseas. Don't know how they do it now after Brexit. I have no idea how that works. Imagine the prices have gone like crazy. I've not been to London for a while. Good afternoon, Richard. Nice to have you. Nice to be here with you. Thank you. I have a question about regional ways and the necessity or not to choose one or how to juggle between them. Okay. Yeah, the way German builds vocabulary. Okay, good, Israel. I got what you meant then. That's nice. Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities there with German and Chinese in that way. How's my Korean journey going? At the moment, it's not going. It's at a standstill. I've not been studying Korean for the last few months at least. I've just had a lot of other stuff going on. But I was actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I was on Twitter the other day and I was writing to the group I would study with, and I just said, I miss you and I hope to go back to it at some point, but I don't know. I don't know when. I hope soon, hopefully. If there's a phrase or vocab that you would like to learn, do you get someone to record an MP3, listen to it over and over again until it's automatic? And do you use Glossica ever? If so, was it effective? Okay, unfortunately, this will have to be the last question I answer because I have to disappear for some food. Do I get people to repeat things over and over again? Sometimes, yes. Depends on the language and it depends on how it's pronounced. So if the pronunciation, and I've learned how to pronounce the words as are represented on the page, then I don't need to do that. Like, for example, I don't know, Spanish. There's no need to get anyone to repeat anything that's written on the page as Spanish is. It's written as you write, it's written as you speak. For other languages, definitely there have been languages where I just wouldn't know how to pronounce it. Some languages and it's not that you'll get it very far out, like a language like Bulgarian, even we've spoken about Bulgarian today. Sometimes you don't know where the stress is on the word, on the which syllable is stressed in Bulgarian, a bit like Russian. In Bulgarian, it's not as big a deal because it doesn't change the pronunciation of certain vowel sounds, like in Russian, for example. In Bulgaria, if I say voda instead of voda, or it doesn't matter so much, or shishe instead of shishe, it doesn't matter so much. People know. Butilka, no, but shishe is not. I don't know how common it is as a common word, but maybe a better one would be, yeah, voda. Let's say voda. So I say voda, which would be the way we say it in Macedonian. And if I say that in Bulgarian, people would know what I mean. It's not like it's incomprehensible. But there are other languages where if you were to say it and you didn't know, like let's take any Arabic dialect or Arabic language, depending on how you want to describe them. And those language variants of Arabic, spoken variants in different countries, compared to MSA, can have quite different sounds to them. So let me just take a number in Arabic, like the numbers. You don't necessarily, for example, in Syrian Arabic, you don't pronounce the th always like the ifnain. It would be itnain, I think. Thalatha, which is 3, would be talate. And khamsa goes to khamse. So unless you know how it's pronounced, and you can't really write the pronunciation so easily, you can't even mark it with the typical Arabic vowels, it would be slightly challenging to write them and to remember them. So sometimes for those types of occasions, yes, it's good to get someone to record it. Hope that helps. And maybe for a language like Chinese as well, it'd be very useful because obviously you've got tones, you've got all the things to go into. The other question you had was, so do I do that until it's automatic? Not necessarily. If I forget a word, I forget a word. I may, if it's important, I'll hear it again. Unless I really want to know it to say something about myself, about my own situation, then I might make a bit more effort. Do I use Glossika? Not currently, no. It's Glossika. It does what it says on the tin. It's a good supplement to other courses or other things that you're using to kind of hear, particularly for languages that you don't get to hear very often. Yeah. Do I plan on studying any lesser known languages in future? Morpin. Potentially, yes. So I mean, at the moment, I'm learning. Been learning Cornish for the last 2 years, and I'm studying Irish as well. I mean, they're fairly. I'm not say lesser known, but there aren't as many speakers of say Cornish as a lot of other languages. But yes, and doing more absolutely. So Brendan, it was good that you. Thank you for coming to the Polyglot conferences on the global editions on the live environment. Really, really good to have you with us. And yes, hopefully we will. I want to do some more Nahuatl as well because obviously going to Mexico, I want to do some more Nahuatl. See how we get on with it. But yes, absolutely. Are you interested in doing some this? You mentioned Walpin. I don't know that, so please do let me know more about it. I'll have to go and have a look online and see if I can find out more as well. Καλή όρεξη. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Καλό βράδυ. Ευχαριστώ. Επίσης, τα λέμε, ναι. Και βέβαια, καλή συνέχεια και ναι, να είστε καλά. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Okay, an Aboriginal language from Australia. Okay, from Australia. Okay. An indigenous Australian language. I think, is that the one that's got the course online? There is one that's got a course online. I can't remember which one it is now. But maybe. I never felt the obligation to choose a regional way of expressing in Spanish. I never actually had a job in Spanish context. So I didn't care and avoided blending regional words from Mexico, España, Argentina. Sometimes a few people assume I speak the language, should identify as separate at all from these regions' vocabularies and watch out for costs. Depends who you're speaking to. So you can make that distinction if you want. Yeah, Noongar is the one online with edX. Yes, thank you for that, Brennan. Yeah, Noongar. Now you've written it down. I remember now. Yes. That sounds really silly, doesn't it? Now you've written it down, I remember, because you've told me. You know what I mean. Sometimes when you see things, oh yeah, of course it was that. Okay, but yeah, if you want to speak a particular way, then there needs to be a real reason, I think, for enojar y molestar. But both can be used in Spain, for example. Está muy enojado, eh? And te molesto. But you use them slightly in different ways, maybe. But yes, you can stick to however you want and mix things in. I think with globalization of a number of languages, there is crossover between different language varieties nowadays. So you hear many more UK kids using more Americanisms than I did when I was younger. We had a very strict sort of line between a lot more than now, and we wouldn't use them as much. But yeah, I mean, you can mix and match as long as people understand you. I think that's the important thing. I think the key thing to make sure you stick with is maybe how you're using pronouns in Spanish, like usted, vos from Argentina. Because you mentioned Argentina, right? Argentina, Spain, and Mexico, and maybe other ones. Maybe usted is used more to people you don't know in, say, Mexico, for example, than in Spain. In Spain, it's quite rare that you hear people use usted unless it's a really formal situation. And vos is used all the time, quite commonly in Argentina, for example. So yeah, I mean, pick what you feel comfortable with. Is my advice. Anyway, I am going to get some food. Definitely time for food. Remember to like, comment, let me know what you want to hear, and follow if you're not following. And join me and encourage me on my crazy endeavors on TikTok if you're not already. Um, I post I've posted quite a few videos out now. I don't always post them again on YouTube and Instagram because I don't know, it feels a bit weird posting the same thing everywhere, although I'm told it's a good thing to do. But have a look and let me know if there's anything from there as well that you'd be interested in hearing. Thank you all so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. It was great to see you again. I really enjoyed it as ever. And I will look forward to speaking to you next week. Take care. Speak to you soon. All the best. Naste kala.